All right. And then after you complete your presentation, we can leave some time for Q&A discussion. So everyone on the session, you're more than welcome to chat in any comments or questions throughout the presentation, and I'll help to facilitate those as well when we get to that point. But thank you all for joining. Shauna, I'll turn it to you. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hello, my name is Shauna White, and I am an attorney with WVU Legal Clinic. We have started a new program this year called the Substance Use Disorder Legal Assistance Program, and I plan to talk a little bit today about the program and about how to spot issues that the program might be able to help you with. This whole program got started from the SORMS grants. I know some of you may be familiar with that grant. It's a state grant, a very large state grant that is directed to help with treatment and services for individuals with substance use disorder. The program itself is helping people in a lot of different ways. We provide direct legal assistance to clients with substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, or stimulant use disorder who have any type of legal problems that are barriers to their reentry into the community and recovery from the disorder. We also provide direct legal assistance to individuals who are reentering the community from the criminal justice system. So our definition of reentry, I know a lot of people have a lot of different definitions for reentry. If you hear me say reentry for our program, it includes pretty much anybody who has a barrier to recovery, a barrier to community living, or just coming out of the justice system, are currently in a treatment system, or have been in the past in a treatment program. The services we provide, like I said, this is a new program. I just started in March. Basically, when I started my position, they said create a program to assist people with their legal problems. So I always can include more or less, but what we've done so far is some brief advice events. This is where I go to the facility. My first one that we did was the Mission in Clarksburg. I go to the Mission once a month. People can call in and sign up for 30-minute appointments. They can basically sit down with me and we discuss whatever it is they want to discuss for 30 minutes. I try to help them the best that I can there. If I can't, I try to give them information and referral on where they could go. Or if they need more help than we can provide there, I have them fill out an application for the clinical law program itself, where we can provide an attorney and direct representation for all of their legal services, just like any other attorney would. Workshops, this is where, let's say you have a group of your patients or clients and you have a lot of them that are interested in expungement, right? So maybe it's easiest to get 5 to 10 people together and we sit down and we work on their expungement applications together and talk about if they're eligible or not. Trainings. This is a training, for example, but I can also do trainings with providers or with your clients directly on those common issues that seem to come up a lot. If you have a whole lot of clients interested in child support issues, child custody issues, expungements, bankruptcy, divorce, if you have more than 2 or 3 clients that are interested in that, we can do a workshop and try to cover the knowledge that they need at one time. And direct representation, of course, again, is just where I represent them like any attorney would in court, with consultations. This isn't a exclusive list, of course, but this is the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit today. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to even go over what the clinic is. A lot of you may not be familiar with what the clinical law program at WVU does. The clinical law program is kind of like a residency program for lawyers. 3rd year law school students get the opportunity to serve real clients in real life situations with the oversight of a licensed attorney, their mentor and their supervisor. So once August rolls around, from August to about April, I will have students who can help assist with these cases as well. While I do a lot of the work, I will have some of the cases and some of the events will be staffed by students with their mentors. That provides us the ability to cover a lot more individuals and provide a lot more services. But back to in order here, the issues that I'm going to talk about are those listed today. That I'm going to talk about are the ones listed here. I'm not going to read each one because we are going to go through them. But as you can see so far, I've handled a lot of different types of cases. And like I said, this isn't an exclusive list, just the most common. So if it falls outside of this list, I can still probably help with it. The reason that we're doing the training today is to help identify issues. Clients don't always recognize that a problem that they have is a legal situation. So, your clients come in, they're patients. Sorry if I interchange the two. My people are clients. A lot of yours are patients to you. But if your clients or patients come in and they tell you about their day or they tell you about a problem they're having, it's not always a non-attorney's, it's not easy for a non-attorney to recognize that that is an issue that an attorney might be able to help address or might be a legal problem. So I hope today just gives you a little bit of information about the different areas that we cover and that are common barriers to people in reentry and recovery, so that you can help recognize them and make referrals to our program appropriately. I have to do my little lawyer spiel that nothing in the presentation is legal advice. It doesn't substitute for contacting a lawyer directly. These are just little snippets of issues. It is not, a full-blown legal lesson on any topic. So this cannot be legal advice. Keep that in mind. Contact an attorney if you have questions. The goal is to identify legal issues during everyday conversations. So that's what we're going to try to cover here. As I get started with the issues, please ask me questions throughout. Either, just pop on through, unmute yourself and ask a question, or pop on the chat. I hate doing virtual presentations because I feel like I'm sitting here talking to myself. So if people can answer questions, or if I can answer questions, I do a lot better and I don't stumble as much like I am now. Okay, the first one that I talk about is expungement because it's the most common. There are a lot of misconceptions about expungement. So my first piece of advice is if anybody ever has a question about expungement, tell them to contact me and we'll walk through it together. Don't assume you are or are not eligible for expungement or what that expungement will do for you once you get it. So many misconceptions, and I'm not quite sure where they're coming from, but wow, people think some crazy stuff. But what an expungement is after a client is totally off probation or parole, they can file a request with the court, a petition with the court, asking that those charges or convictions be totally removed from their record. So it can be a charge. So if somebody is charged with a felony, but let's say it's dismissed, they can get that removed from their record. If they are charged or convicted of if they are convicted of a felony or misdemeanor, that might be able to be taken off of their record. The waiting period can be anywhere from 90 days to 3 to 5 years. Actually, I have 3 on here. I need to fix that. Anywhere from 90 days to 5 years. Depending on a whole lot of different factors. Basically, more charges equals more time. But one important thing to know is in West Virginia, if somebody has successfully completed a recovery program or a job readiness program, that cuts their time significantly. So whatever their time would normally be that they have to wait for that expungement, if they are part of one of the programs like you all provide, it's probably going to cut their time down significantly. It's also important to keep in mind not everything is expungible. Again, I would tell clients not to assume that they aren't expungible or are, to call me, but I do like to make people aware that, if it is a DUI, if it is a sexual offense, if it is abuse and neglect charges of a child or elderly person, those are not likely to be expungible. But sometimes, we can see, and like I said, don't assume, always call, but those are ones you have to be concerned won't be able to get off. For an expungement laws only apply to West Virginia state charges. So if you have a federal conviction or charge, or you have a charge or conviction from another state, those do not apply to the expungement process. There's a lot of different reasons that expungement can help people. Financial aid and housing. The most obvious and important one is employment. Almost everybody does employment. Background checks and expunging a charge can really, really help with that. There are some things that expungement won't help, but again, there are a lot of nitty-gritty details to it. So if you have clients with questions or want to do this, definitely point them in our direction, because it is something that helps a lot of people, and people have a lot of misunderstanding about. Okay, I see that somebody has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you. We got a chat and asking, would that include enrollment with the Jobs and Hope program?
Yes, absolutely. Jobs and Hope is one of the programs that counts. There are a couple others in the lineage, but Jobs and Hope is pretty much the reason why that shortened time period was created, was to assist people in the Jobs and Hopes program.
Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else have specific questions on expungements before I move on? Okay, the next issue is pardons and clemency. This is related to expungements, but it's important to recognize the difference. A pardon or clemency is where you ask either the governor himself to pardon you, or the president of the United States through the Department of Justice to give you a pardon. You have to do this in a couple of different situations. If you have one of those state charges or convictions that falls into one of the categories that I talked about, the only way to get those off your record is through a pardon by the governor. If you have any type of federal charge whatsoever, it can only be done through a presidential pardon. There is no expungement for federal charges. This is done by applying in a very big, complicated application to the president, or to the DOJ for the president, or to the governor's office for state charges that are non-expungible otherwise. This actually does, what I like to say about this and why I included it is because myself included thought it has to be something big deal, right, to get a presidential or a governor's pardon, but it actually doesn't. They do I'm not sure what the presidential number is, but the governor of West Virginia does about 100 of them on average each year. So this is something that is attainable for people. It's a lot of work, so the person has to be ready for it if that's what they want to do, but it is obtainable if you have a charge that is not expungible and you have kind of a merit to your case. The waiting period is 5 years for that, so you have to be off paper completely for 5 years before you can apply for a pardon or a clemency. When I talk about these, I throw this in here just because I get so many questions about it. I never imagined I would have so many people ask me about this, but gun rights restoration is something I'm very unlikely to do at our clinic. The reason is because a simple expungement alone is very unlikely to give you your rights back. A lot of people think that they can do an expungement and their rights are restored, and that's not true because of federal law. So I don't necessarily consider gun rights barrier to reentry or recovery. So if that's the sole reason somebody is seeking an expungement, I am probably not going to take their case. I can see maybe some situations where I'd make exceptions if somebody needed a weapon for employment or had a really good reason for it, but otherwise, most likely, I'm not going to be able to help with that because I just can't justify using resources for that purpose. Okay, the next biggest issue is child custody. We get lots and lots of child custody cases that come through. I would say that's by far our second biggest barrier to recovery that we have people ask questions about. A custody case can look like a lot of different things. So could be a guardianship order. One thing we see a lot is that people will give, parent or sibling guardianship of their children while they're in recovery or while they can't care for them. And then once the person is clean and out and ready to live their lives again, that person doesn't want to give the children back. That is the biggest one we see. That is definitely something I can handle and help out with. There's also voluntary custody agreements where the same kind of thing happens. Parenting plans, if clients often who were married or who have a custody dispute with the father or mother of the child, where the biological parents have a dispute, they usually have a parenting plan in court. So, or they should have a parenting plan in court. So if somebody is having issues with the mother or father of their child, that they're, letting you know about, you can definitely refer them so that we can get an official parenting plan put in place by the court. That is a court order that outlines what custody is and holds people accountable. Now, these cases don't always require direct representation. So sometimes I can help somebody just by allowing them to go through, what they need to fill out and send to the court. Because what happens in pretty much every single one of these cases is the judge sends them to mediation. So they'll have a professional mediator who will try to get the individuals involved to agree to an outcome. Now, the child custody stuff is very, very different than the abuse and neglect cases. I also get a lot of abuse and neglect cases where somebody had an abuse and neglect case filed against them, and their children were removed, and now that they're clean, they would like to have some rights to their children back. This becomes a much different issue and gets much stickier. What I can do for your clients is I can give them advice. Most of the time, if they're having trouble with court-appointed counsel, or if they need a second opinion, I can sit down and speak with them. What I cannot do is provide direct representation, because the court will provide attorneys for those cases. So we can't dual represent, but I can help them work through their issues or help them work with their attorney better. I've had clients come who just didn't even know their attorney's name and number. So I was at least able to sit down and figure out who their appointed counsel was and how they can get a hold of them. If the parental rights are terminated, it's very, very hard for me to do anything about that. So I can try, but there is not a pathway in the law for a biological parent whose rights were terminated to ask for the court to change that order. So that is an uphill battle. I can provide the direct representation on that end if the parental rights have been terminated, but it is difficult. So it's a case-by-case basis, but most of the time it's going to be a no. Does anybody have any questions up until this point about the child custody issues or anything? No. Okay. Divorce is another issue. A lot of people don't think about divorce being a serious barrier to recovery, but it truly, truly is. If somebody is in a relationship with somebody else who uses, I'm sure it can make it very difficult, or it can be just emotionally difficult to have that hanging over your head while you're going through recovery. So I help a lot of individuals with their divorce proceedings. Again, a lot of times the brief advice events or the workshops are good for divorce because it's just like child custody. It has to go to a mediator. So a lot of times I don't do the direct representation route, but I do help them get everything filed up into that point of mediation. And then if mediation doesn't work, I tell them to call me back. If it is a case where it's a really complex situation, that's when you really want to make sure you refer your clients to us. Like domestic violence situations, if there are a lot of financial assets or a very complex custody situation, those are times when somebody probably does need a lawyer. Otherwise, a divorce is pretty simple in West Virginia. Okay, voting rights. That is another area where a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions. And most of the time, I don't provide full-on legal services for this because it's not necessary, but I can help explain people's voting rights to them because, again, so many misconceptions about what voting rights are after you have a conviction. Basically, if you're a felon, people think if you have a felony charge, you can never vote again. That is absolutely not true. As soon as you are off of probation, parole, everything, if you're totally done serving your sentence, you can go register to vote again. So that right is restorable once you've served your sentence completely. Another way that I help people is if they are in treatment, like in a residential treatment, if they're in a residential like mental health facility, or if they're in jail, they can absolutely vote by absentee ballot. And if anybody tells them differently, that's where I can come in and help them apply for get registered to vote, or help them apply to get that absentee ballot and vote while they are in a facility like that. Housing is a big one, and this usually falls around evictions. So I'll talk about evictions first. If a client is letting you know that they may be evicted or they're having trouble with their landlord, it is very, very important that you have them call me, or you call me and get a hold of me as soon as possible, because if I can deal with the situation prior to the actual formal eviction, I can probably fix it. You know, I've got probably a 95% rate of success before the formal eviction is filed. Once it's filed, everything gets a lot more difficult, and I have not a very good track record for success. So evictions is something to keep in mind. If it's an eviction, as soon as possible, get them to me, especially if they're HUD, and because if an eviction will keep people from being able to get HUD ever again, pretty much. So you don't want to let them get that formal eviction. Housing can also include accessibility issues and discrimination. There are a lot of people don't realize that in employment and housing, public accommodations, the ADA applies just like it does to any other disability to substance use disorder. So if there is an issue with accessibility to their renting, or discrimination issues because of their substance abuse diagnosis or treatment, that is something we can handle under the ADA. License reinstatement is a huge one. I probably should move this one up the list because it's probably second to child custody issues. A lot of people either rack up court fines or get DUIs while they're using, and then when they're ready to get their license back, they find they have significant barriers to that. That is something that we can help with quite a bit. Luckily, West Virginia has the Second Chance Driving program, and what that program does is allow people to set up a payment plan and pay off their fees, their court fees and restitution and all that while they get their driver's license back. Normally, you have to pay every penny back before they will reinstate your driver's license. This allows them to work with the court to set up a plan where they can get their driver's license back before all the payments are made. That is a very helpful program for a lot of people, because a lot of people have a lot of little, court fines that they got while they were using that have now added up to a significant amount of money, and not being able to get your license back, is very difficult if you have to pay that off first. And the other issue is child support. A lot of people are behind on their child support and they can't get their driver's license due to that reason. That's something we can help with. A lot of times the child support office just wants to know that you are making a good faith effort to pay what you can to help your children. And usually if you can do that, if you can show them that, it can even be $5 a month, you know, whatever you can afford, they will work with you on getting your license back before you fully pay that back payment. DUIs are just, they are the least fun. DUIs are hard. I have a lot of people come to me with DUIs, and basically, to try to get fewer people to commit the crime, they make it really unpleasant, you know, because not just criminals are committing the crime of driving under the influence, but regular common folks who don't commit any other crimes are doing it a lot too. So to make it as a deterrent, they make your life as miserable as they possibly can when you get a DUI, and that will follow you even if that DUI was 18 years ago. There are a couple of things that people are going to have to do. They're going to have to do the safety classes required by West Virginia law and the DMV, and they're probably going to have an interlock system on their car for some period of time. The interlock part is usually where I can help out. If somebody truly cannot do it for some reason, they can apply for a hardship waiver with the DMV. It is very difficult to do on your own. So that is a time that the legal clinic can be of a big help, because it's very hard to even get them to talk to you about it by yourself, but the attorneys can contact the attorneys and have a little more luck with getting those hardship waivers. And the DMV's decisions are actually separate than court decisions. So it's very hard to get them to change their mind about a lot of things, but they also mess up a lot. So, you know, if people believe that they have done everything they can and still can't get their license back for some reason, there may be a legitimate mistake that we can uncover and help them with. Employment is something that we deal with a lot, but it tends to fall under a lot of other issues. Like the answer to most employment questions is expungement. So, you know, most of the time, if you can't get a job, it's because you have it on your record. We need to get rid of it. So that is usually the answer to most employment issues. But we can also help if your client's having trouble working with, like, say, the Division of Rehab Services or a work program. If they're not getting the help they need, or they feel they're being treated unfairly by those programs, people don't realize that that is a legal issue, and that we can help with that they have a right to work with those programs in a certain way. And if it's not happening, that might be a time to refer them to the clinic. Social Security is also a barrier, because people think they can't work and be on Social Security at the same time, or they work on Social Security and they get overpayments. Those are all things that we can help with. I can help people learn how to work while on Social Security and not lose their benefits. And I can explain the benefits of working while you're receiving Social Security benefits. And I can also help them figure out how to deal with an overpayment and how to not end up with an overpayment again. Discrimination is a big employment barrier. Once somebody is fired, again, it's kind of like eviction. We get into a more difficult situation. But if it's the person's on good terms or okay terms with an employer, and they're being discriminated against because of their substance use disorder, that is definitely a time to call us. And a lot of people don't realize what discrimination looks like. Discrimination due to substance use disorder means not allowing you the time off you need to go to treatment, telling you that you can't be on a medication assisted program where you work at a certain place. That's discrimination. An employer cannot ask too many questions about your treatment or recovery. An employer cannot deny you FMLA due to the need to be off for substance use. So a lot of these things happen in life every day, where somebody can't get their schedule changed to go to treatment or doctor's appointments or counselors, or talk to their peer support specialist, or, you know, maybe you need to talk to your peer support specialist while you're at work to get you through the day. Those are all things that can look like discrimination if you are suffering, or if you are experiencing substance use disorder. They ask for, we had a patient, I see in the chat, you had a patient fired for going to treatment. They asked for the paperwork and then fired them the next day. Yeah, that's pretty bad. I would have to know the exact circumstances of that situation, but technically, yeah, that is discrimination under the ADA. If there was no other reason to fire that person, that's discrimination. That is not allowed, and we could definitely look into filing a claim with the EEOC or the State Human Rights Council. That happens a lot, and that is discrimination. Now, in those cases, the person usually can't get their job back, but they can get payment for, you know, the income they should have had and things of that nature. And the employer gets told it's wrong, which I appreciate, so that maybe they won't make mistakes again. So yeah, that's definitely somebody you could refer to our clinic, and we could definitely go through that information with them and see if they qualify. Why it's difficult after somebody gets fired is because if it's half that they're not a very good employee and half that it's discrimination, then the law still sides with the employer. So it can be rough to prove that the person didn't get fired because they weren't a great employee. So at will employment is a problem, and that's why I say we can usually help before. Like, I usually tell somebody to contact us, you know, when that employer asks them for the FMLA papers, or when that employer starts asking questions about what's going on. That is when you probably want to call an attorney and get help, because if you have an attorney who's turning in your FMLA papers, believe me, employers react a lot differently than if you're doing it by yourself, or if you're negotiating your leave with an attorney. That looks a lot different than if you're trying to negotiate your leave by yourself from your employment. Credit history is also a big thing that keeps people from getting jobs these days. This didn't used to be the case, but in today's world, a lot of employers are worried about people with debt posing a risk to their companies, and a lot of people who have substance use disorder manage to get themselves into quite a bit of debt. So if credit is a problem, credit scores and debt are a problem, there may be some situations that we can help with, and I will talk about bankruptcy a little later on. Probably need to move that slide too. Medicaid and Medicare issues are legal issues that we can help with. If somebody is denied or is found ineligible, or they lose their benefits, then a lot of times we can take a look at that and determine if it was appropriate or not. You know, a lot of times DHHR workers make mistakes or misunderstand the policies themselves. So if you have somebody who you think it really looks like they should be eligible for Medicaid or Medicare, and they're not getting the benefits that they deserve, or they're denied altogether, that is a time you may want to reach out to us to see if we can help with those issues. If not, we may be able to help reach out and find other forms of programs or agencies that can help with certain types of treatment if we can't, you know, get Medicaid or Medicare to pay for it. We help with other state and federal entitlements other than just Medicaid and Medicare. We work with Social Security issues like overpayments, some eligibility with Social Security. It would depend on the situation, but if somebody has been denied Social Security and you believe that they do qualify for it, you could reach out. We have, actually, I don't do the representation, but we have an entire separate VA clinic for just VA cases at WVU, and Jed is really good, the attorney in charge of that. So if you reach out to me or the clinic with any type of VA issues, they will definitely get great assistance. SNAP, TANF, and utility assistance is also things that sometimes people are wrongfully denied, and that maybe we can help if they run into those problems. Bankruptcy, like I said, with the jobs these days, you know, with employment these days, wanting people to have good credit, bankruptcy can actually help more people. Bankruptcy isn't for everybody, but it does help if you have a lot of dischargeable debt, if you have a lot of credit card debt, if you have an unsurmountable amount of medical expenses. for some people, bankruptcy really is the best way to go. It has downsides, you know, your credit is limited for about 7 years, but at the same time, it gives you a clean slate. And I feel like this is very important for the recovery community, because I've seen firsthand a lot of people who are in so much debt when they finish, you know, when they're done with their immediate residential treatment, that they lose hope and just give up. You know, no, they could never make enough money to make payments on these things. They could never get ahead. They'll never be able to own a car or a house. And if they're in that situation, bankruptcy could at least give them a path moving forward where they would be able to do those things again. Immigration and tax issues. I don't even talk about what that is included with that too much, because I don't know enough to know what I don't know, basically. But WVU has 2 specialized clinics for both immigration issues and tax issues. Since they are such highly specialized issues, if you refer somebody to me, that's wonderful. I will make sure that it gets to the right person and that it gets assigned to students and a supervisor. But they are very good. They're very extensive. And so if they have issues, please refer them to our clinics as well. Okay, how and when to make these referrals. Right now, this is a work in progress. I'm working with every entity, every provider, every individual on how to best refer people to me, because this is a brand new program and we're still figuring out even how we're going to serve people. So the first thing I can say is I do these brief advice events. I started talking to Katie this morning about setting one up. I have one at the Clarksburg Mission every month. And these are basically monthly events with providers where every, you know, like say the 3rd Friday of the month, I come to the provider in person and I make 30-minute appointments where people can come and talk to me. That is where I can serve the most amount of people. So if you can find an event, or if you would like to set up a day like that in your clinic and you haven't spoken to me yet, that would be a wonderful idea. We can also set up those clinics via Zoom. So if you have clients who you think would participate in this type of event, I can set up a certain number of hours on a certain day via Zoom, where I can create links and send them out to the clients. And then, you know, we could meet for 30 minutes to discuss whatever issues they have. I like to have the most people helped through this avenue because it allows me to help the most people. I can really get to a lot of people this way. If this is not an option and your client really needs help, you can always call the clinic or call me directly. You can always send me an email. From August to April of every year, there's an online application you can fill out. Make sure that you somehow note on there that you are looking for the substance use disorder clinic so that it gets to me. Otherwise, if it gets to the wrong program, it may not get served as quickly. If there is any type of a deadline on a case that you know of. So if you know somebody has a hearing come up, if you know somebody got served papers, if you know there's any time limitation on somebody's case for any reason, that's when you want to go ahead and pick up the phone or write me an email directly, because I need to talk to that person right away. If somebody's served papers, I might have 20 days if I'm lucky to respond, and that is not much time to investigate a case, get all the information you need, and draft an appropriate response. So that is one thing where I buck all of the other rules and say, just get me on the phone and let me know what's happening, because I can't take every one of those cases, but if I do decide to take the case, it's way better if I know sooner than later. I've had clients even come up to me after they've missed deadlines, and I have to say, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. You missed the deadline. I can't change that. If you're unsure if we can help or not, you know, if it's something that wasn't listed here, or you're not sure if it meets those requirements, just email me or give me a call. Right now, I'm not too overwhelmed, so I'm pretty good at getting back to people and helping clients in informal ways. So I'm pretty open to that now. And if somebody even needs me to come see them at a certain location, if they can't make it somewhere else, I'm willing to do that in emergency situations. I have dropped everything to drive down to the Mission to help somebody who was going through who was served papers for a custody issue. So I try to do a holistic approach. I try to be more approachable than a typical attorney kind of. I try to let people know that, if you're involved in my clinic, I'm going to be there to help you. I'm not going to talk to you 15 minutes before your case starts in court. We're going to talk through the issues, and I'm going to listen and try to solve all of your issues, and not just go into court and barely know what I'm talking about. If you have questions, now's the time. There's my contact information.
Thank you so much, Shauna. We so appreciate your time and for you sharing your expertise with the group today. And it was a different kind of didactic that we're used to in this group, but it's so extremely relevant. I can't emphasize that enough. And I know this group will definitely get so much out of this. And I will be attaching your slides in the recap email that I send out. I'll make sure to add you in there as well, so you'll see it. But if anyone has questions after the session, they'll be able to email you or contact you with this information. But thank you so much. I really just can't express my gratitude enough for you joining us today. And I know it was a little bit more on the last minute side, so you just coming is really nice. But yeah, we'll open it up for any questions. Dr. Gorby, I see you chatted in. Does it cost money to get things expunged?
What was that?
We had a question asking, does it cost money to get things expunged?
Yes and no. There are fees associated with it, but if your client is below the income levels for what the court considers the poverty level, they can get a fee waiver. Also, if they win the expungement, half of the fees are waived. So if your client, cannot afford, usually it's a $200 filing fee along with a $100 background check fee. You can get that $200 fee waived. And if the expungement is granted, that $100 fee is also waived. So yes, people sometimes have to save up some money to pay that. But a lot of our clients fall under that fee waiver income limitation. And I'm not sure what it's different in different counties, and I don't know them all off the top of my head, but it's usually about the same as Medicaid and other typical things that you see.
Thank you so much for that question, Dr. Gorby, and for answering that, Shauna. And I will emphasize that this is a collaborative, safe space for anyone to ask questions. So anyone is welcome to chime in, unmute, or if you'd rather chat in, I'm happy to read out the question. Oh, Dr. Bixler, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks for a really interesting and really fascinating presentation. I really appreciate all the information that you shared. This is a little off topic, but I'm wondering if there's any anybody in West Virginia working on access to care issues. And I'm specifically thinking of access to care in corrections, such as access to medication for opioid use disorder for persons who have opioid use disorder, or access to hepatitis C treatment, those kinds of things. Do you know if that's going on anywhere? Thank you. And again, thank you.
Yeah, I think the Peers in Jails program is trying to do that on an individual basis, where the peers that work with the individuals in jail, the peer support specialists, are advocating on that issue. I don't know of a whole lot that's going on otherwise. I know Disability Rights was trying to work on some stuff, but I'll be honest with you, that's where I used to work before I started this job. I think they dropped that for another issue. So I don't know of anybody off the top of my head who's working really hard on that. I know Mountain State Justice was for a little while. I don't know if they still are or not. I would guess they are, because they had some pretty serious lawsuits, but at the same time, I think they settled those lawsuits. So they may not be working on that anymore. I know that access to care is a big, huge problem, and something needs to be done about that, but there's not, that's outside of my realm of expertise for sure. My grant only allows me to work on individual issues. So
Thank
Great
you very
question,
much.
Dr. Bixler. I don't know if Sheena or PJ, if either of them are on the call. I know that part of our COE is looking at creating that, and sort of in addition to the peer work that they're doing, you're also putting a good sort of bee in our bonnet that could be a great thing for us to present on to this SUD Echo in the future when we have those programs more up and running, to talk about how to get folks connected to them. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Comments or questions from the group?
and again, feel free to email me with any feedback you have. I don't care if it's horrible, because I have no idea if this is helping people or not. So if, give me any feedback, how it could be better, something you didn't understand, something I could make more clear. Please, feel free to do that.
Thank you so much, Shauna. I highly doubt it was anywhere remotely near horrible. That's far from the truth.
Oh, thank you.
I saw you unmuted, Katie.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for your time in this training. Thanks for your time this morning on the call. I had no idea until I talked with you this morning. I was not aware that you existed and just you were so quick to want to offer, patients, not only in these clinics, but you also said, like, listen, if you've got somebody they have a question with this, please feel free to send them our way. Oftentimes in the past, legal aid provide a very small, narrow window of how they can help our patients, and or as you pointed out earlier, sometimes what happens is patients are working with lawyers and they are only meeting those lawyers 15 minutes before a court date, and not really having the time ahead of time to answer questions about things they're feeling really anxious about. So I just really appreciate what you're offering and your commitment to want to help this population.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. And that's why I love doing the brief advice events, because I can get to so many people that maybe don't have, like, they're probably going to get denied by legal aid, hands down, but 30 minutes, I can really help ease some of their fears or explain the system to them or what's going to happen. And I find that is probably the service I've provided that people respond to the most. So I love the idea of doing those, and I'm excited to set up as many as I can.
Excellent, thank you. And I just have to read out some of the chats coming in, just thanking you very much and saying how helpful and informative your presentation was, and they just appreciate you. So just have to echo that as well. And I'm happy to launch the poll as well. I know that'll be super helpful for you. So I don't want to jump the gun, but are there any final comments, questions for the group before I launch the poll? My echo pause.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for having me, and I will let you move on with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you so much, Shauna. We so appreciate your time. I'll launch that poll. I'll be sure to send you that poll as well, Shauna, after we get that information. So I'll go ahead and do that. If you all can just kindly fill that out. It'll take no more than a minute or two. Is everyone able to see that okay? Excellent. Thank you for the thumbs up, Katie. All right. Thank you, Shauna. And thank you all so much for joining. The only announcement I have is that the next session will be on August 14th, and Dr. Husted will be presenting on long-acting options. So we're excited for that. Wear some buffalo plaid or floral.
I promise to next time. I won't let you guys down. So thanks all.
We never do.
Sometimes.